Football 101, and I am your host, The Beetle, and this is our special show, Fantasy Football Week number 1. That's right, this is our first Fantasy Football show, and this is Fantasy Football Week number 1, and I am your host, The Beetle, and I want to thank all our platforms. First, I want to thank Podbean for being our host, podcasting host. They're doing an outstanding job of setting us up, providing us all the necessary tools to get our information, get our podcast show out there. I want to thank Apple Podcasts. Thank you, iTunes, Apple Podcasts. I want to thank Spotify. I want to thank YouTube. That's right. The world is listening on YouTube, and we want to thank Instagram. And again, all our followers, all our listeners, please email me at ejb8892@gmail.com. That's ejb8892@gmail.com. We're trying to go live pretty soon. We're trying to go live and setting up a situation on Podbean so we can stream live. So again, but this is Football 101, show number 16, and it's Fantasy Football Week number 1. Now, let me just tell you, I won. I'm playing NFL on the NFL Fantasy Network, NFL.com. And my team, here's my team. Oh, I'm revealing my team already. Yes, I'm going to reveal my team to you right now. Here's my team, my fantasy football team that I selected. Starting quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, baby. Mahomes. Yes, he's a beast. Patrick Mahomes, my quarterback. Then I have Tarek Cohen, running back, Chicago Bears. Then I have Nick Chubb, running back, Cleveland Browns. Wide receiver, I have DeSean Jackson, baby. Yes, when I said they left DeSean Jackson on the table when we were doing the draft, I said I have to pick DeSean Jackson. He's returning back to Philly. He smoked it against whichever team, against Washington this past week. And then, my other selection, Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins is totally back. He has super speed. He's not injured anymore, and you can see he scored about 2 or 3 touchdowns. He garnered what was it? 9 receptions for 188 yards. Wow. DeSean Jackson had 8 receptions for 154 yards. 54 yards. So I got them on my team. I had also I had another tight end from Minnesota. He did not pan out, but he was there. He didn't get any points. I have Curtis Samuel, wide receiver. Now, my second team, my backup, is Tom Brady. My backup to Patrick Mahomes, and dare I say this, is Tom Brady. Tom Brady had 341 yards. And let me just say, and 3 touchdowns. Latavius Murray, backup running back. Wow, I may have to change him out. He was for New Orleans Saints. Larry Fitzgerald, wide receiver, bringing in the points, 8 receptions, 113 yards. Pick Larry Fitzgerald, folks. And I have Tyler Lockett, wide receiver, Seattle Seahawks. You better pick. He's gonna have a big day. And my secret special selection is Cordell Patterson. Pick Cordell Patterson, wide receiver, Chicago Bears. He's gonna have a breakout. I almost guarantee it throughout the season, because he's like the 3rd wide receiver, but he's the fastest wide receiver that the Bears have, and they're going to have to depend on him more and more as the season goes. So if there's anyone out there, you want a good fantasy pick, I'm just telling you, pick up Cordell Patterson. Here, I'm giving you a tip. Okay, Cordell is my last wide receiver, and then for kicker, I have Steven Gostkowski. Patriots, and I also have the Patriots defense. So I at least won my first game. That's the biggest thing. I just want to win one game, but I won my first game against my competitor. So I'm 1-0, ranked number 3 in my league, and yes, and you can follow me. I'm Football 101 in fantasy football. Football 101 is everywhere. We're also in fantasy football, baby. So you can look me up, Football 101 fantasy football. I won at least week number 1. And I've been playing fantasy football basically for the past 2 years, 3 years, and I've always come in the middle of the pack. And it was, again, you could just tell. Let me just say, sometimes, well, not sometimes, the league gets kind of biased, but those who make the league, and you come in, and they usually pick the best players. And so I was not at the very start of the draft, but I picked the best players that I thought in the draft. Patrick Mahomes, still Mahomie, is bringing it. And Tarek Cohen, he's going to get started. He had 8 receptions, 49 yards. He's going to get hot. Nick Chubb, once he gets into the offense, he had 75 yards. But you got to check. Here's what I'm learning about fantasy football. You got to select some of the. And I just picked up on the waiver wire, and I'm leaving a sleeper. This is really a tease for next week, or next time I do a fantasy. I picked up a veteran player off the waiver wire, and hopefully I will get him tomorrow. But he had a monster game, and I said I should have picked him on the very first week. But now I have selected him, and let me just see. Yes, it's going to be pending until tomorrow. He's my sleeper as well, but had a monster game in the first week. In fantasy football, what I learned, pick some of the veteran players, the dark horse favorite. You think they're has-beens, but they're really not. Pick the veteran players at different positions. Running back, wide receiver, and tight end. You won't fail. Because many times when you try to pick a rookie, they just don't get enough playing time. Pick a veteran who is like, okay, they had their best days before, but they're still there. Pick a veteran player, has name value. He's going to get touches. That's the thing about it. In crunch time, when it's business time, what I realize a lot of times in the games, particularly on the fantasy football time, players, the quarterbacks want to get their numbers. They want to win. So many times they will go to that veteran player who may not have been starting but comes off the bench but eventually starts, and they just blow up. And they finally get healthy and they just blow up. And so, again, I don't know how my veteran players will be, but I'm stacking the deck with my veteran players on fantasy. I'm stacking the deck with my players on fantasy football. So, again, here's my team. Again, my starters, Patrick Mahomes. Starter, Tarek Cohen, Nick Chubb, Deshaun Jackson, Sammy Watkins, and I got Jordan Reed and Curtis Samuel of the Panthers. My backups, dare I say this, Tom Brady. It's a shame for me to even say this, but you got to go with the numbers. Tom Brady, backup. Latavius Murray, backup. Larry Fitzgerald, backup. Tyler Lockett, backup. And Cordell Patterson, backup. Wow. But then I got the kicker, Patriots, defense, Patriots. So, again, my insight, my tip for fantasy football, NFL fantasy football followers, since I've been doing this for the past 3 years, pick up your veteran players. There's plenty of veteran players, by the way, and I'm not going to go through the list, but and I'll give you some tips each and every week. And I got a couple of, like I said, one veteran player on the waiver wire right now. But what I'm learning, truly, if you want to win your game and when you're matched up with a competitor, and I don't look at what my competitor has, by the way. Don't look at the competitor. Play your game. Find your matches. Look at the teams that you're playing against, that your starters are playing against, and just think about, will they have a good game, particularly if it's a very competitive, if it's a rivalry game. Many times your stars will have a good game if it's a rivalry game. But I tend to go to the veteran players. So that's one of the key tips that I learned from playing fantasy football, and how some of the other winners from fantasy football, how they actually win. So stay true to the game. Stay true to fantasy football. But think about the matchups and think about week to week, and be willing. Here's another: be willing to change out players. And stay current on the injuries of the players, but be willing to pick up players on the waiver list, and try to keep. If you know you want to keep the players who are not playing, keep them on your team. Don't drop them. Keep them there. It's worth it, because you don't want to lose your players and then you can't get them back. So if you drop a player, make sure you drop them and you pick up a valuable player in return. So and that's what I just did. So my key tip: pick up the veteran players. You won't go wrong, and I will reveal my special dark horse favorite for next week or the week after on fantasy football. So I won my first game of fantasy football with my starting team and my backups. So I'm feeling good. NFL fantasy football 101 is real. Fantasy football is real. So send me an email if you want some other tips, some insider tip. I will send you a personal email at ejb8892@gmail.com. Send me a direct email. I will give you my insider tips for fantasy football. That's right. Football 101 will give you my inside tips on fantasy football, because everyone needs some tips, on inside information from different sources, and I'm really going out and getting the inside information from various resources and seeing if my players are ready to play. What's the situation? Are they at max performance, or are they just getting a paycheck? And again, I was very hesitant to get involved with fantasy football, and I do not play it for anything else but for the love of the game. I do not play it for any money, anything like that. I just play it for, okay, let me match up some players and see how they do. And I'm not that crazy about it, over the top crazy, but I like seeing my players perform well. And so that's the excitement I get out of fantasy football. But if you want some specific tips on which players to select, email me at ejb8892@gmail.com. This is fantasy football. This is fantasy football edition of Football 101. And this, what was it? It was our fantasy football week number 1 edition. And I am the Beetle. And have fun this weekend. See you, everybody, because this is Football 101 Fantasy Football Show. See ya.